September 9th, 2001, the American version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire welcomed 8 contestants to the studio. The atmosphere was filled with excitement. Everyone shared the same dream: to make it to the hot seat, answer 15 questions, and change their lives by winning $1 million. But getting into that hot seat wasn't easy. First, all contestants had to pass a preliminary round, the fastest finger first challenge. When the question was given, nearly all contestants got it right. But only one person was the fastest, and that person would move on to the main game. It was Charles Ingram. He completed the round in just 3.97 seconds, an incredibly impressive time. He walked up to the stage looking confident. Studio lights shone on his face, where every camera and eye in the room was focused. However, that confidence didn't last long. As the game began, it quickly became clear that Ingram often wasn't sure of his answers. He hesitated, wavered, and frequently changed his mind. After just 7 questions, he had already used nearly all his lifelines, with only one left. A typical contestant in that situation might become cautious, or even give up. But Charles didn't. He kept going, and strangely enough, he kept getting every answer right, one after another. Eventually, he reached the 15th and final question, the one that would determine if he'd win the $1 million prize. The studio became silent. The tension was suffocating. The final question was read aloud. The correct answer: A. Google. Upon hearing the question, Charles said something that caught everyone's attention. "I've never even heard of Google before." That comment left the entire studio in disbelief. How could someone who had never heard of Google possibly win $1 million? But less than a minute later, he changed his tone and said, "I really think my final answer is Google." And then, the host smiled and said, "Congratulations, you've just won £1 million." The studio erupted. People stood up and clapped. It was a rare moment. Before Charles, only 2 people had ever won the top prize on the show. His journey was seen as nothing short of a miracle. But maybe it was too miraculous. And that's when the suspicions began. Chaos backstage and strange suspicions. While Charles was smiling on camera, backstage, the producers were starting to feel that something wasn't right. A sound technician immediately called Paul Smith, CEO of the show's production company. Even though Charles was still playing at the time, Paul Smith gave a direct order: "Let the game continue. Don't interrupt the show." When the episode ended, Charles Ingram was given a $1 million check. But the show wasn't aired right away, and the check was held for 8 days under the pretext of paperwork processing. During that time, the technical team quietly reviewed the entire recording. And then they noticed something incredibly strange. Charles Ingram, who had seemed unsure, who had used nearly all his lifelines, had somehow kept giving the correct answers. They began analyzing the way he responded to questions. Ingram often thought out loud, saying things like, "I've never heard of Craig David. I'm not sure, but I think maybe it's B." What was odd was that he often started by rejecting the correct answer, then just seconds later, changed course and confidently selected it. Not only that, he read each option out loud, one by one: A, B, C, D. At first, this seemed like a habit, but then came a detail that made the whole crew freeze. Every time Charles read the correct answer, a cough could be heard from the audience. Not once, not twice, but many times, repeatedly. In one question, who was Jane Kennedy's second husband? When Charles read the correct answer, a cough rang out. And then, he picked it. 192 coughs and a plot exposed. The entire crew quickly shifted their focus. They stopped watching Charles. They ignored the gameplay. Instead, they carefully observed the audience. In the end, they counted a total of 192 coughs during Charles Ingram's turn in the hot seat. Most of those coughs lined up perfectly with the moments he read the correct answer. This couldn't possibly be a coincidence anymore. Paul Smith, the executive producer, immediately called the police. But before that, he made a call directly to Charles Ingram himself.
Mr. Ingram, I'm the CEO of Celador. I'll get straight to the point. We've reviewed the footage from Monday's recording. Through careful analysis, we've found several irregularities during filming. As a result, we've referred the matter to the police. Therefore, we will not be airing your episode or approving the prize payment.
A historic trial and media frenzy. A year and a half later, the case went to trial. It quickly became a massive media event. People called it the most shocking TV fraud in British history. The three defendants were Charles Ingram, his wife Diana Ingram, and Tecwen Whittock, the man who had been coughing in the audience. The court concluded that Charles and Tecwen had worked together. Every time Charles read the correct answer, Tecwen would cough as a signal. Diana, meanwhile, was suspected of training Charles on how to read the answers clearly out loud to allow for easy coordination. In the end, all three were found guilty. Shortly after, 2 documentaries were released. A drama series called Quiz also aired. But the most surprising thing is, even now, Charles and Diana have never stopped claiming they were innocent. I won that money honestly and fairly. While I was in the studio, I didn't notice anyone coughing at all. A controversial case. Did they really cheat? The defense lawyers argued. Tecwen Whittock had a chronic cough long before the show. The recordings were edited, making the coughs that matched correct answers louder and more noticeable. If this had been a real scheme, why didn't they use a more complex code? For example, cough twice for B, 3 times for C. Despite these arguments, the evidence showed Tecwen had coughed 19 times, exactly matching the correct answers. Yet, in another episode where Tecwen himself was a contestant, he failed completely. Many also questioned the logistics. With hundreds of people in a closed studio, isn't it normal for someone to cough? So how can we be certain the coughing was intentional? In 2014, the Jack B Show raised several doubts about the fairness of the trial. Later, the drama series Quiz reignited public debate. Could this have been part of a bigger scheme? An underground network that had exploited the show for years? The truth about probability and the coughs. A man passionate about statistics became curious and decided to run the numbers during the COVID lockdowns. He wanted to know, could Tecwen coughing 19 times in sync with the correct answers truly be random? After simulations and analysis, he concluded, if out of 192 total coughs, half were from Tecwen, the chance that 19 of them coincided with correct answers was just 8%. In other words, there was a 92% likelihood it wasn't random. Even more suspicions arose when it was suggested that Charles's wife, Diana, may also have coughed at key moments. The aftermath, a family shattered. Even without absolute proof, the consequences faced by the Ingram family were severe. They were hounded by the media and mocked by the public. Tecwen lost his job. At one point, he even had to trademark his own name to stop people from using it to name cough syrup. The family fell apart. Careers were ruined. The price of this alleged TV scam, if it truly was one, was far too high. To this day, Charles Ingram still insists he was wrongly accused, and this story remains one of the most controversial moments in television history. Did he really cheat? Or was he simply the victim of an unbelievable chain of coincidences? That remains one of the great unanswered questions. Every time someone brings up Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, this strange case comes back to life. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to the Bur Storytelling channel so you won't miss the next stories. See all.